All right, hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy. I'm here with Maddie B and Rick David. I apologize for any of the technical difficulties we experienced last week. Hopefully everything's fixed and we're good to go. We're going to start it off with a high tempo. Go ahead, Matt, since you were getting started before we started recording here. Go ahead.
I said beforehand I wasn't going to bring this up, but I just feel like I have to. The whole Ball family, I just wish that they would just go away. Just go to Lithuania, stay off of ESPN, stay off of any news outlet, and just go away already. It's driving me crazy. Old man LeVar is now trying to sell water. It's like at the point that I see him at, he reminds me of Spaceballs, where they're just like, Spaceballs the flamethrower, Spaceballs. It's like Big Baller brand shoes and water and underwear and feminine hygiene products. It's like Big Baller everything. Like, just stop. He's definitely milking Lonzo's experience with the Lakers and then trying to parlay all of that. And he looks like a gigantic clown. Barnum and Bailey couldn't put on a better circus than what he's trying to put on. Pulling his kids from school, not disciplining his kid from, potentially being jailed in a Chinese prison. He just nothing applies to him. And it's annoying. Just go away.
Well, I will say that if he is successful in getting all his kids on the Lakers, then you really won't have to worry about it unless you're listening to the Lakers. But at least it would be contained then. And I don't listen to West Coast media, so that would open it up for me never to see them again. Rick, what do you got this week for High Tempo?
Mine is about one of our great former Pirates doing some great humanitarian work of Esteban Loaiza with getting arrested with what ends up being 20 kilos of either cocaine or heroin, which ends up being 44 pounds. Either or, they don't know, but nobody knows how much because they're still going through everything right now. He's currently jailed in the San Diego prison on bond of $200,000. So just absolutely stupid. This is how you spend your money. And the funny thing was, a couple weeks ago, he was at White Sox Fan Fest, meeting and greeting the fans. It's like, this is who you bring in? A guy who's one of the top drug dealers? In from grace. I don't understand what you're doing. Just save your money. By the way, on the weirdest side note ever, he has a star on the Walk of Fame in Las Vegas. If you look on the Las Vegas Walk of Fame, there's a star for Esteban Loaiza. You may be saying, did he pitch there? No. His former wife, who died in a plane crash, was a singer and got him a star on the Walk of Fame in Vegas. So even Dolly Parton and other people don't have one, but Esteban Loaiza does. So I don't get it. Esteban Loaiza, we'll never see you again. You'll probably be in jail. So, probably doing some state or federal time, whatever he ends up being. But absolutely stupid. Why the heck do you do this? You don't need to do this. You're making money other ways, and so I don't understand it. Second all-time leader in wins for somebody born in Mexico. So that's a trivia question there for you.
Well, I'll be honest. I didn't even know that they had a Walk of Fame in Vegas, so chalk me up for not knowing that. And why do you know so many facts about that guy? You know about his wife?
Random facts, doing some research. Well, here's the thing. People end up saying, how did he make his money? Well, he made a lot of money in baseball, but he also made money because his wife, who is one of the top Mexican singers of all time, was making money in Mexico. Obviously, they're both from Mexico. So they were going to divorce. The divorce never got finalized, and he got her inheritance because she died tragically in a plane crash. So he has all of her money and was using her money plus his money from baseball to buy all these drugs and everything. And he was making appearances, like I said, at the White Sox Fan Fest. So absolutely crazy thing when you add all this in together. So
that is crazy. And I'm going to go ahead. My high tempo this week is something even crazier. And we never really talk about the NBA just because Pittsburgh doesn't have a team. And just around the area, like growing up, there wasn't a lot of good basketball to be played. You were either a fan of one of the big teams like Jordan's Bulls or whatever, but The Cleveland Cavaliers basically traded their whole team. And if you're an NBA fan and you think that LeBron doesn't call the shots, you're crazy. Because he has to be behind these moves. He has some guys coming back. Isaiah Thomas gets back from injury. They don't really gel together. Boom. Traded. They said that it was some of the stuff he was talking and everything else he didn't fit in with the team. What that means is he didn't fit in with LeBron. And it's kind of becoming like a WWE type scenario where they're making their super teams. I just think of like the New World Order. You bring in that together back in the day, that's what the NBA's turned into me. And so I just wanted to bring that in. There's a reason, like, I just don't really watch too much NBA, so we don't really talk about it. There's not a Pittsburgh team. But whenever you just have superstars calling their shots and trying to team up and getting together, you really don't have to worry about it until the playoffs come when the finals show up. But it'll be interesting to see if they get back or not. We're going to go ahead and
I would say this, though, Richie.
Ahead,
before you jump, I was reading an article. They were saying today that the NBA is running into a similar issue to something we talked about earlier in the year with the football injuries. And the basketball injuries this year have been just as bad, if not worse. There's the potential, I think it was like almost a 50% increase in player injuries this year. And they're linking it to having the shortened preseason as the reason as to why players are now being more injured, and they're worried that do they have to cut regular season games out, or what the reason is for that.
I'll tell you, I'll add on to that, because I think another thing that people don't realize is they're playing more games. If you look at rookies coming into the league, everyone always makes a big deal about how many minutes LeBron played. But if you're a rookie now and let's say you're so-so, you're going to be a journeyman, you get demoted to the D League or whatever, you're playing nonstop, you don't get a break. I watched some of the old Michigan guys. They've been jumping back and forth between the league, but in the D League, it seems like they're playing every couple days. And then you get called up to the NBA, and you're right into it. And, of course, if you're trying to battle for a roster spot, you're playing all summer. I think of, like, what happened to Embiid. I think he was getting injured coming back, and then they hold him out and things like that. When you have so much pressure on these rookies to play, you got to play all summer. You got to play in this NBA Summer League. Let's say you're on a roster for a team that goes in the playoffs. You're practicing all through June. You hit the summer. You do the Summer League, and then you get into the season, and you're playing D-League games, getting called up to the NBA. You don't get a break. That's going to have to wear down. And this is a newer thing that didn't really start less than, 5 years ago or so? So it's going to hit the same thing that they try to push it on like the NFL and college while they're playing too many games, things like that. The NBA is in the same boat because they're trying to push this year-round product. They want games to be played year-round, and it's just gonna keep getting worse and worse. So I don't think you're gonna see a player play more than 20 years unless he gets into a scenario where he's really babied and can take nights off. I mean, and that's another issue altogether.
But that kind of goes into whether you put the cart ahead of the horse. Because one of the things that the NBA tried to do is they tried to cut back on the back-to-back game days so that they weren't going back-to-back trying to save some of their legs and some of this. But what they're finding is by cutting the preseason games and trying to cut it on that side and making the regular season games more valuable, the players aren't regular season ready. They're not conditioned. They're not ready for that. So then they just kind of jump right into the deep end of the regular season, and they're not ready. They're banging, and it's leading to more injuries. So I think even if they cut games, if they reduced it, the NFL is a prime example of they have a limited schedule. They have limited off-season programs. They have limited contact, and you're still seeing the same style of injuries. Belichick's one of the ones that really advocates for having as much extra practice time and having that time back with the players, in his opinion, would lead to, fewer injuries.
Yeah, and I agree. Go ahead, Rick.
And I was just going to agree with that. You do got to have a preseason where you get some practice and everything. I think the problem is with the NFL and the NBA is you're having these games, their ticket prices are skyrocketed through the roof. And that's what the problem is. The fans don't want to pay for these tickets. So you cut the preseason or try to make it better or something along those lines. And that's the problem. Instead of doing what hockey and
I think I might have got cut off
season either in Arizona or Florida. I can still hear you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and then I mean, like in hockey, they'll go play at AHL arenas. They'll go play in other places and play in front of a couple thousand fans and not have a problem. I think that's the problem the NBA needs to do is go play where these D-League games are played in, and go try to get there and just get those fans some games just to see you sell out a game or something along those lines. It's better than going to your arena in the preseason where nobody's showing up because nobody wants to pay those skyrocketed prices. So I don't get it. And the other thing, too, is that I think the NBA doesn't, like you go to D-League to right there. But if you're a second-year player and you're like even a starter or a swingman type or something, you're not playing in D-League games. You're sitting around. You're just working out. You're not playing in games, really. So I think that's one thing. Yeah, so it works against them. As a rookie, it's fine. But when you go to your second year, you're not playing in as many games because you don't have to go play the developmental league in Vegas.
Yeah, it's something that I think it would be different for veterans compared to rookies. I was thinking initially rookies going in, but veterans, yeah, it's too compressed for them because if they take the summer off, yeah, they're out of shape. And then they hit it hard in November. And let's be honest, one of the reasons people don't watch in November and December is because the basketball is awful. Just because they're out of practice, like Matt said. And I would advocate for them, cut some of this summer league bullshit out, and just extend the season. Do you really need, you're already not really doing a preseason anyway, and your stars aren't going to play in preseason. Just kind of extend it the regular season. I don't think at this point you really need a preseason anymore, especially if you're playing at your home court and this could go for hockey too. Hockey and basketball, really, do you really need a preseason? Those were kind of before. It gives fans a chance that might not have money for regular season games, a chance to see the games, and they used to play them at smaller stadiums. I know the Hurricanes, or not the Hurricanes, the Hornets/Bobcats, whatever they are, they would come into Raleigh here and do some preseason games, and that would give people a chance, and I think the Hurricanes would go to Charlotte just to give other people a chance to see the games. But with TV, you really don't need that anymore. So I'm all for cutting out preseason. Let them get used to it on the court or whatever. There's so many games that really doesn't matter. But I'm going to get back into that. I'm going to kind of compare that with college hoops after we do the Steel City update. So let's go in to the Steel City update, looking at the first thing for the Pirates. Matt, you went ahead and you sent us something on, who was it? Elias Diaz?
Catcher Elias Diaz.
Yeah. Go ahead. You want to give us a recap on that?
Yeah, on Saturday, I caught the article that his mother was kidnapped, and they ended up being able to rescue her by police in Venezuela. So she was kidnapped out of her San Francisco home, I believe, and they were able to find out, and they had it linked to potential drug cartels that kidnapped her. So the Pirates released a statement from the president saying that they were going to fully support all efforts to bring her home, and I'm glad to see that she's brought back. So that was a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, that's crazy. And to be honest, there's a lot of shady business with the MLB player development camps in some of these countries, and I'm surprised it doesn't happen more. But another big Pirates news.
Yeah, Rich, I just want to add one thing to that. Just for our fans at home, San Francisco is a city in Venezuela, which is right outside Caracas. The second thing is Venezuela is a very corrupt country. I talked to Jorge Julio. If anybody remembers him from the 90s, he was the closer for the Orioles. He no longer goes back home to Venezuela because of it. And he goes, his buddy is Bobby Abreu. They're good friends. He goes, if Bobby Abreu goes back, he brings 6 security guards with him, and at least 4 are carrying guns. That's how bad that country is. I mean, if you could look up Joe Benson, there's another story. He was kidnapped out of a taxi. and they took all of his money and wallets and had him at gunpoint and were going to shoot him. I mean, he used to be a prospect for the Twins. Now he's playing independent ball. But I mean, Venezuela, they don't send as many team players there to Venezuela. There aren't that many teams that call it home anymore, have a training camp there. Most have it in Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico. I mean, a lot of teams are getting out of Venezuela. I mean, even the United States, if you look at it, we don't buy a lot of oil from Venezuela anymore. I forget what the number is. I think it's less than 5% of our oil is bought in Venezuela. You're getting all these weird facts with me tonight.
I know. I was going to bring that up.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Most of our oil does not come from Venezuela. If you're ever wondering,
I never would have wondered that.
But they are one of the closest countries to us. They're in OPEC. So there's another thing. So, I mean, but that's the way it is. I mean, Venezuela's tough. That's why a lot of players will get their families out. Jorge Oleo told me his whole family is out. They're in the Miami, Florida area. So, I mean, it's a corrupt nation. It's very corrupt. And look at the people who got arrested. 5 of them were believed to be police officers. 5 out of the 6 were believed to be police officers. And they know one that was arrested was a police officer that was his next door neighbor. So, I mean, it's crazy stuff. It's absolutely crazy.
That is crazy. And yeah, I mean, with so many players from down there, yeah, I wouldn't think that they would want to go back at all. Most likely they would try to get their families a better life and move them into the United States. But in other news, go ahead, Matt.
With it being that much cheaper to live there, though, maybe you could buy the big house on the big side of town.
Dude.
But definitely didn't pay out there.
Yeah, I don't know. You just have to weigh your options, I guess, if you want to get murdered. But that's probably an insensitive comment. But we'll go with the Pirates pitchers and catchers have reported, and the excitement level right now, 0. Because no one knows that everyone knows they're not going to compete. So Pirates in the news for all the wrong reasons. They were getting investigated by the Players Association for using some of the revenue for they weren't using it for signing players, but I think that was resolved, or at least it was dropped. So I don't think there was any big news out of that. For the Penguins, they climbed up. They were really close to first place in the Metropolitan. They're in second. On the hot streak still, 7-2-1. Their last 10 games, starting to play well. I'm just hoping that this holds, and it looks like they have enough to at least get comfortably in the playoffs. If they keep this up for another couple weeks, and then they can start to fine tune things and get it ready for the playoffs, which I'm getting excited for, because the way it's shaking up, I'm thinking that they're going to have a really good chance. Right now they're sitting in what would be about the 4-5 spot, and you're going to end up playing someone like the Flyers or the Devils, and I just think that they're going to go ahead and roll that, and I would love to see them play Philadelphia and beat them after I watch their Super Bowl parade and I watch one of their fans eat horse shit. So it just magic. It would be great to knock them out of the playoffs in something, because we don't want them to get too excited over there on that east side of Pennsylvania. Anything else you guys want to add up? Nothing really on the Steelers. I've kind of gone into blackout mode for the NFL after the Super Bowl, because soon we have the draft coming up. So I'm just trying to get excited for that. I'm trying to stay away from the Le'Veon Bell drama, because that's unnecessary, and he's turning into his own version of the Ball family for the Steelers.
I have one thing to add. The Penguins are playing tonight. They are winning currently 5-2. So I will say that they just ended the dad's trip. They're back at home for 3 straight here. So, and they're beating Ottawa, and Ottawa's already put their starter in, even though they were playing their backup goalie tonight to start with Condon. They put Craig Anderson back in. Ottawa's not looking good tonight. So it looks like another win. So that'll get them closer. So if they get a 2-point win, that puts them at 68. So, and right now Washington's standing at 70 points. So
yeah, they're in a good position to make a run. I wanted to bring it up. Good thing you reminded me there. When Fleury came back, he got a great reception. Was it like a week or so ago? Whenever Vegas came in. So I wanted to just say that was really cool thing for the fans. It looked like he was a little bit shaken up, and I know it meant a lot for him to play in Pittsburgh. So good to see him having some success, and a warm welcome for him. We're going to use that to turn around here. College hoops on the docket. Haven't really talked about them much, but we have to talk about the Pitt Panthers. Their program, Jeff, who does Spaces or Laces, a Pitt alum, I've been going back and forth on him about the state of Pitt athletics, and I've been kind of harsh because I'm an outsider. I'm looking at it. And in around like 1999, 2000, Pitt, they kind of invested in basketball. They went ahead, they built the Pete, and they moved their football program to Heinz Field. It looked like they wanted this basketball stadium. They were going to go all out, and they did for a while. Jamie Dixon had a great run with them. Didn't really make any moves in the tournament. I don't think they've ever even made a Final Four. So you have about, 2 decades now, it seems, where Pitt invested in basketball, and it didn't really pay off. They moved to the ACC, and now they're just getting slaughtered. I think, what are they, Rick? 0-13 this year?
It's 0-14. They just lost tonight, so 0-14.
It gets crazy looking at it because they're turning into Boston College. And, I mean, there's some similarities there. Both city schools used to have a good history in the past now. It kind of reminds me of like Boston College when they have the Doug Flutie Hail Mary. Pitt, before their football games, will show like some Larry Fitzgerald catch, or like the upset over West Virginia that year that they knocked them out of the national championship. And those things just seem so distant. And I don't know, they're trending down. I know, Matt, you have some big fans in your family and stuff. What do you think about Pitt right now?
Well, I think Pitt is struggling right now because they want the immediate success. And when Jamie Dixon left for TCU, he really left Pitt in a tough place. And when Stallings was tired, he understood going in that the team that Dixon was leaving was majority seniors, and there was pretty much nothing after that. So he went in, and he hasn't been able to pull recruits in. And so he was under the assumption that he was going to have time to build the program and be able to recruit his guys and get them through. But I think with where they are now, with the AD leaving for Oregon State and with the new administration, for as bad as they are, I don't know that the athletic department, if the fan base is going to give them the opportunity to fix this. And I honestly don't know what would have to happen to fix it, because it doesn't look like they're playing consistently. They don't have consistent scores. It just looks sloppy from the very little bit that I've seen. It doesn't look like a team that could potentially make some noise in the tournament. I mean, they're definitely not qualifying this year, and it'll be, at least in years past, they were consistently making the tournament, winning a game or two in the tournament. But it seemed like with Dixon, he was a coach that he can get you there. He's kind of like how we joke about Reed with Kansas City. He'll get you there, you'll qualify, you can feel good about making the playoffs, but are you going to do anything once you're there? No. And he never did anything while he was there, which was one of the knocks on him. That it wasn't like as he left, there weren't a lot of people that were saying, well, we're screwed now that he left. It was kind of like, all right, well, let's get someone else in. And unfortunately, they went with the worst possible person they could find.
I look at it and I just think you're right on a couple of things. Jamie Dixon, man, he's at TCU right now, and they're ranked, or maybe they're not ranked anymore, but they're pretty high in the Big 12. Everyone's overhyping the Big 12, but I'm waiting for that inevitable meltdown where they lose in the round of 32, and they're done, and they're home, and then next year he'll do the same thing. A regular season hero, a true Peyton Manning of college hoops coaching. So, yeah, Pitt, I understand that they're lost, but at this point, you need to win in-state recruiting. You're Pitt, for God's sakes. I think the worst thing that happened to them was Villanova winning the national championship. Because if that doesn't happen, really, where are you right now? You can be pulling the same kids that Villanova's getting. I think a while ago, I pulled something out on like Instagram. If you follow us, Southbound Sports, I had like the top Pennsylvania recruits, and the only school that was really pulling them was Villanova. So Pitt needs to go ahead. Penn State's not going to pull them either. Let's not beat around the bush. Penn State at basketball is awful. I think the administration knows that they're good at women's sports and wrestling and other things like that. But basketball, they know they're not going to go ahead and compete when the winter months roll around. Pitt, on the other hand, used to win those recruiting battles in state, and they would pull it. But now you're looking at Xavier, which is in Cincinnati. They're in the top 5 right now. Those are kids that could have potentially went to Pitt. If you're looking just from hoops pedigree, really, they can't let small schools like that, Xavier, Villanova, get recruits over them and take advantage. I mean, when Villanova won, now they have kind of that name brand thing. I think they might have won one in the 80s as well. But you're just making it tougher on yourself. You were gifted a good in-state bust with Penn State, so who are you really recruiting against? You're recruiting against these other private schools, and I have the list right here. So Miami, Kentucky, Villanova, Indiana, South Carolina, Rhode Island, Villanova, and Michigan. And those were the recruits from last year. I had the top 8 recruits. That might have been the ones that all had stars assigned to them or whatever. But Penn State, nowhere to be found. You have to recruit in-state. You can't have, whoever did I say there, Miami taking the top recruit in-state. Give me a break. Kentucky I could see, but Rhode Island, South Carolina, I know South Carolina made the Final Four, so that might be some recency bias for them. But come on, Pitt. Got to do something. Rick, you have anything to add in on them?
Yeah, I have a couple different points. I mean, their conference isn't set up. Pitt basketball was never set up to play in this conference. I mean, look at your teams. Virginia, Clemson, Duke, North Carolina, Louisville, Miami, Virginia Tech. Syracuse is even a middle-of-the-pack team. That was a Big East elite team. Comes here and they're middle of the pack. I mean, Pitt right now, 0-14 overall. I mean, here's some of their stats. Points scored in the nation. So their total points overall, 324th. Ooh. Points per game, 342nd. I can't even name 200, Division I teams, but some others 342. I mean, your 3-point percentage, 308. Field goal percentage, 320. I mean, these are awful. Assist, 248. Just awful. I know Stallings. I think here's the thing with Pitt. Stallings was the easy hire. There weren't people weren't knocking over the door. They treated Ben Howland like crap at the end. He goes to UCLA and did some good there. I mean, but when Ben Howland was there, he could recruit Pennsylvania. And he can also recruit New York City. They used to have that New York City. Chevy Troutman was, I think, from the New York City Bronx area. They could get those Bronx, Brooklyn kids there to play. That soon as Howland left, that pipeline was gone. And then you had Jamie Dixon, who could recruit, but then it looked like they were trying to push him out the door. He goes there, and then it's like, okay, we're Pitt. We just think people are going to show up, and nobody's showing up that wants to coach there. Stallings was the easy hire. I'm going to say the reason why he was easy, because he wanted a job. He wanted it real bad, and mostly because his son's a Pirate prospect and is always going to be the 3rd or 4th catcher. Well, usually 2nd. Cervelli's made of glass. And then he'll be able to move in. That's why. I'm going to be honest. I know where he lives. His son lives with him in Pittsburgh when he's playing there. I mean, the guy walks to Oakland every day from his apartment that he lives in. I mean, it's just this guy was set up to move here. He was an easy hire. He was not the best hire. He was not the best where he was before. And it's just, I don't get their thinking. He can't recruit. He can't coach. He hasn't won a game yet this season. And I mean, the most famous person that walks into the stadium is a 91-year-old man named Dick Groat, who was an All-American at Duke that calls the games for Pitt. I mean, it's just embarrassing what has happened to this team. I mean, you have 8 wins, and here are some of your wins. UCSB, which I believe is which is San Bernardino, California. I mean, Lehigh, High Point, Duquesne in the city game, Mount St. Mary's, McKees State, Delaware State and Townsend are some of your wins.
Ooh.
Those aren't wins. Those are like small school D1s you're battling right there. Those are like the Patriot Conference and those teams. I mean, these aren't like big, huge teams that you're beating. I mean, I believe it's all on Kevin Stallings and the Pitt administration. I don't think Stallings can recruit as good as Howling and Jamie Dixon before him, and I think it's left him with tough shoes. And remember, at one time, you couldn't even get a ticket to Pitt. You were paying $100 for a ticket, and it was a non-conference game. I mean, I'm looking at the stands for the game today. It looked like you could have got third-row seats. There were third-row seats that weren't used all game. I mean, it's just disappointing. I mean,
they said that average
Pitt
attendance is in the 4,000 now.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's only like, what, 30%? How many does that hold? 12,000? Maybe less than that.
Yeah, and it went from 10,000.
Yeah, it was over 10,000.
They were averaging 10. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And now they're saying average is like 4,000. I mean, who wants to see that? There's nothing good. Stallings, the part of the reason that they recruit him is because it was said that he can recruit the DC area. So if he could pull the DC kids, it would make sense why he would abandon some of the in-state kids, especially if you know that Villanova is going to pull them away, pushing the basketball school route. You know, especially coming off the national championship, that makes sense. But at the same time, you know, you're a major program in state. You got to start acting like it at some point. Maybe you make the splash hire and go after Crean.
That's who they should get. I think we mentioned that before, didn't we? Was that something I started on here?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We started talking about it. He's unemployed. He's looking for work.
He sounds so good, though, when he does the games. So, you know, he still knows what he's talking about. Plus, he married a Harbaugh, so then you have that triangle going on with the Harbaughs, and we know Rick loves them. So we could talk about more Harbaugh stuff on the show.
That's your first Harbaugh reference today for those fans keeping track at home.
Well, don't worry, we're getting into signing day here in a little bit. The last thing I wanted to mention for college hoops, and this is something I'm going to get into deeper next week. So it looks like the Big Ten compressed their schedule because they wanted to play the Big Ten tournament in Madison Square Garden, where the Big East tournament is, and I could get some of the city stuff wrong. So now Michigan has been playing crazy amounts of games, and I don't see how this helps the student athlete at all. There was one stretch where we played, 4 games in like 10 days or something crazy like that, maybe somewhere around there. But you're going away, you're flying to Nebraska, you're coming back, and you're flying to Penn State. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. You can't tell me that a playoff round in football is going to be harder on the kids than being gone for 4 games in like a week and a half. How did they go to class? I mean, they were dog tired whenever they played. I think it was at Nebraska or at home. They're like, come on, Big Ten. You make the most money. I think we put that out there. It was confirmed that even without them making the playoffs, without getting the playoff bump in football, their conference still made the most money. You can do whatever you really want. Does the Madison Square Garden thing really push the needle that much that you have to really crush your student athletes here? Like, do the right thing. I can only imagine that this is going to hurt them come playoff time or the tournament time, because you have Ohio State, Purdue, Michigan State, all ranked right now, all potentially high seeds. And, I mean, maybe it's going to pay off. They'll get a little bit of a rest before the tournament, but I don't think this is unprecedented right now. And I feel bad for the guys. Like, you really can't go to class whenever you're playing that many games. And it's not only Michigan. I mean, it's every team, because they're trying to fit the whole conference schedule in a week early. So I'm going to keep my eyes on that. I'm going to try to bring in some stats whenever it gets closer to the tournament time for that. Sticking with college, Notre Dame shot in the 2012-2013 season. They had an NCAA investigation. It was 2012 was their undefeated season where they lost to Alabama in the national championship, and they ended up going 12-1. And then in 2013 they went 9-4, I believe. They went ahead and they got NCAA came in, said that there were some student on student assistance in whatever test. They might have been cheating or whatever. I really think it was only students with students or students with tutors or something like that. It wasn't as deep as what UNC was. And so they petitioned it, said, hey, we don't want to lose our wins. Well, the NCAA came out, I think it was today or yesterday, and said that they're upholding it. Notre Dame has their wins. They're staying vacated. They're not giving them back. And to me, I think this is crazy. You're looking at one of the top programs in football, and I'll joke around. They go head-to-head and against Michigan with winning percentage. It used to be within a point, and it would fluctuate every year. Something to keep an eye on, like which school is going to go ahead and have the highest win percentage at the end of the year. Taking away 12 plus 9, whatever that equals out. I don't want to sound like an idiot on the show, but taking away those wins, you're pretty much taking the top, one of the top 2 programs in college football, and you're knocking them down a peg. And you can't say you're doing it for academic reasons because you had UNC right there. You had UNC right there for similar things, and you didn't do anything. So now Notre Dame's sitting here. I think their president came out and wrote a letter, even pointing at the UNC thing, saying this is out of bounds. And I'll be honest, I talked about that every school claiming as many national championships as they want. I think Notre Dame should do the same thing here. Print the wins in the roll book or in their whatever stadium guide you get whenever you get there. And who cares? What are they going to do? The NCAA is going to come back and tell them that they're going to take more wins away? No, they really can't do anything. Print it in there, and who cares what they say? Because other schools are printing. What was the Florida State national championship that Auburn claims? Matt, was it 93?
93.
Yeah, so Auburn's claiming a 1993 national championship when they were on probation. Notre Dame, go ahead out there, claim those wins, print them up. Who cares what the NCAA does? Do you guys want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, they draw with taking those wins away. It dropped Notre Dame from 2nd to 6th, and so Texas, Ohio State, Nebraska, and Alabama jumped ahead of them.
So funny. I will say that's a funny aspect on that. Michigan opens at Notre Dame next year, so it's good to not have that extra pressure on staying number 1. But I think it's funny that they fell behind Ohio State. Go ahead, Matt. You want to add anything else?
I just think it's the standard. They have to be consistent with this. If they're going to penalize them for it, fine, but start doing it across the board and start doing it to all areas. Don't just pick, we're going to continue to pound on this UNC drum until something actually comes out of it, where they're vacating wins, or they say because we're not going to vacate it, we're just going to give the wins to everyone else. Whoever else has been penalized and wins taken from them, you get them back. Is the only other way that becomes fair.
Yeah, and I'm waiting on that because Michigan has that 2013 national championship in basketball. Louisville's sitting right there. They're saying that they shouldn't lose it, and they most definitely should. I think what Notre Dame did is way, way less of an offense considered what UNC and Louisville both did. And I think right now you're just kind of slapping the big dog. Notre Dame has enough clout where they can step back and get some other things changed with the NCAA. Rick, what do you want to say?
I kind of agree with Matt, and I have always thought of that too. Why don't they give the wins to the other teams? Give them wins, because what would have happened if these players weren't eligible, or what would have happened if they, didn't play, or, they played and had a touchdown? I don't understand. I think that's the one thing that the other teams deserve to win because you were in the wrong. I don't understand why that doesn't happen. And I never understand. You'll take you'll take the wins, and you also take whatever the player stats did as well. So it may have been like coaches that were doing violations that never affected the players. So they may have done some whatever. They did whatever. Like Patino. It didn't some of that stuff did affect the players, didn't. But then they lose all their stats, and it's like, okay, this didn't have anything to do with us. Why did I lose all my stats? I remember when the Penn State running backs was like, I no longer have a rushing yard in college, but yet he had some award. It's like they'll let them keep their awards for whatever, top, linebacker of the year. But no, you don't have your, all your sacks and tackles. It's like I don't get all the different things, and that's what makes me not understand it. We'll take your wins, we'll take all your stats, but these guys have trophies still to prove how well they did, you know?
Yeah, I think they need to do something. I agree. They need to do something like that. Take the wins away and give them to the other team, or just do something even more drastic. Could you imagine if they permanently took a scholarship away, and maybe not for basketball because they're so limited, they would have to do something else, but you just permanently take away, like repeat offenders, like Auburn. You guys keep cheating, you lose one. Go ahead, keep trying it. You'll take another forever. You're stuck at 84 instead of 85, and then we'll see how many teams turn it around, because then you have kind of like the carrot and the stick thing. You know that if you get caught, you're going to lose a scholarship permanently. This thing with Notre Dame, though, just seems like they're chasing ghosts. They think, all right, well, we'll take Notre Dame down, and then maybe the public will come around, because if you think about it, the public's usually split on Notre Dame. Usually everyone loves them or they hate them. So by punishing them, you're giving all the haters, they're going to come around and say, well, the NCAA looks like they're starting to come around and they're starting to punish people. But I see right through that. It's fake, and they're poking the big dog just because they know that that will take some of the heat off some of their other inactions.
But I think here's another point to consider with that, though. If you do claim to take away a scholarship, if you do that from a team, how do you police rabid fans? You know, if you have someone who, like, thinking of Miami with that, was it Shapiro or whatever, that was like paying to put players up and do different stuff with the university. If you have some kind of booster that's like a complete whack job, the head coach is saying, don't go around this guy. You know, how do you police that and keep those guys shielded from those outside people? I think that's kind of tough, like as a coach, for me to say, don't go around this type of person, or try to keep to the football program or whatever. If those players choose to step outside of that, it's still a reflection of the program at the end of the day. You know, I think that becomes a very difficult situation then, of if it's an issue, if there's some kind of thing, how do you stop that from happening? You know, whether it be like a tutoring situation where with Notre Dame, they're saying like the players were like getting, like having former students give them grades or whatever. It's like, how would you be able to prevent that from across all sports from happening? I think if you're truly thinking that Notre Dame's the only one that has this happen to them, I really think that you're living a lie.
Yeah, and I agree, and that's why I think I might be in the minority here, but I think when you're dealing with boosters, if they keep bringing up about paying players, I think they should just let boosters be legal. I mean, most schools already do it. If you don't think they do, you're lying to yourself. Most schools already have some type of booster thing where it might be like some type of handouts or whatever. I mean, just think about it. You're getting something weird. I mean, look at the Laramie Tunsil thing. He had text messages that coaches were paying for his mother's electric, basically confirming it. The NCAA now, they're looking at him, but how long until they make a decision, and will they even be sanctioned? I mean, I don't know what jurisdiction the NCAA even has. Are they able to subpoena like cell phone records to check these texts? I don't know what kind of power they even have. Probably not. So I would just say, let each school do like a booster scholarship fund where, boom, you guys want some pizza, whatever you guys want, come get it out of this special fund. I mean, it's already happening. Let's be honest. The bigger schools that sell out the stadiums are going to have more money, but you need to either go all in and have this happen, or just keep lying to yourself and think that all schools are on equal footing. And I don't know what could happen, but I think Notre Dame getting hit is just a shame. I don't know what else they could have done. And it happens pretty much everywhere, I think. You have guys like Chip Kelly who were paying for recruits. He's back in and everyone's celebrating. Everyone's like, yeah, Chip Kelly's back. Great. I mean, he wasn't a good recruiter when he was here the first time. What makes you think he's not going to pay? Now he's in UCLA. He doesn't have to pay some weird guy from Texas to get recruits to sign with them. He's right in the city. He can go right to the high school coaches and pay them. Hey, here's a couple grand. Why don't you steer so-and-so my way? because a lot of people don't think of this. They're not always paying the players. A lot of times they're paying uncles, mothers. They're paying high school coaches to steer them in. I mean, if you get a pipeline to one of these big schools, you're pretty much set. I mean, look at what UCLA does with Snoop Dogg. And we'll use this as a segue to signing day. I think, did I send you guys that? Like Snoop Dogg's out with, was it Nate Dogg? Or no, Nate Dogg's passed away.
Warren G.
Warren G.
He's out with Warren
That's his
G.
brother.
Yeah, he's out there having his kid sign with UCLA or USC. Like, how is that not a violation? Because the Snoop Dogg's there. He's like a huge rapper. And that has to be tampering. You know, he's a big USC booster. Snoop is. He's hanging out right there. It's basically, I know it's like his friend, or I don't know if they're actually related or what.
I think they're either brothers or stepbrothers. I'll go look that up now.
Well, I guess I would go ahead and take it off the docket as booster tampering. But you're looking at it and you're seeing it the whole day. If you're watching College Signing Day, and luckily that winter signing day kind of took a little bit of the excitement out of this main signing day for me. I tried to watch some of the announcements, but man, they have to do something. I watched some of these. They're trying to stream them on ESPN, but it's like so-and-so. There were so many announcements pushed back. So-and-so's announcing at his high school, oh, and he's last. But we're going to show you every other high school athlete in his school signed first with all their schools. And let's be honest, this could be negative and it could be a hot take where people come at me, but whatever, bring it. No one cares about these other kids signing at so-and-so soccer D3. If you're going to have ESPN come to your school to broadcast, just show the main guy. Don't make me wait 3 hours, or because you have a crappy internet at your high school, so it takes you 20 minutes to get set up, and then everyone has to sit there for another half an hour. Could you imagine if you were getting paid to be one of these recruiting site scouts? Because I've seen them happen where they're like live streaming on their phone at a high school auditorium, and it's like 10 high school kids lined up and no one's even paying attention. Everyone's just talking. They're announcing it. 3 people handshake while everyone else is just waiting for the big recruit to pick out where he's going to play football. I mean, that's really what it is. And I know schools are trying to get publicity for their school. I don't really know what their other end goal is, besides maybe parents complaining that their kid isn't getting the special attention that they think they deserve. Oh, but why are you focusing on this guy? You know, because like 30,000 people are watching the stream and they're not watching your son tell us that he's going to join the chess team at Townsend University. Like, no one cares. Do it individually then. I would like to see that. Go ahead and you have Periscope now. You can just do 5-minute streams for each kid and watch how many people tune in to all those other kids. It will be zero. It will be zero. So that's my initial reaction today. Matt, I know you were watching closely. What do you think?
All in all, I was very pleased with how the day ended up, with knowing, and we touched on it last week, with knowing going in that Florida State, with Jimbo Fisher leaving, and their recruiting class was absolutely a mess. Coaches weren't seeing players for like 2 months, and just not to close out with almost a top 10 recruiting class was borderline a miracle. I thought one of the things that I was surprised with was the kid from California, Woodbay, that was a 5-star, commits to Florida State, 4-star, gets that last star taken away.
I was going to bring that up.
Bush League.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, if he plays like a 5-star, I really don't care. You know, I think you could be a 3-star recruit and be successful. But I think I hate, depending on what school you decide to play at, they're going to give you a bump or take a star away. Like, I don't know what changed that they decided, oh no, now you're not a 5-star anymore. You've been a 5-star the whole time, and now you come in as like, oh no, we changed our mind.
Well, Matt, I think you're missing a key detail here. They're probably using the Butch Jones system. He was a 5-star. He had his commit, and then he flipped, so he lost one of those heart points, and he dropped to a 4-star heart.
Well, if that's what it takes to not be a life champion, then you know what? Then I'll be okay with that. The other thing that I thought was, I always laugh, is you'll see a kid that like commits to like a mid-level program. So they'll have like Ohio University and they'll have Temple University, and then they'll have Alabama as one of their hats on the table, like to give the impression that, well, I turned down Alabama to commit to Ohio. No, you didn't. You need to keep you need to keep them hats. You need to keep them hats consistent and stay in your lane. To sit there and have like Power 5 programs, Clemson, Alabama, and DeVry. I'm going to choose to play at DeVry. Well, that's because you don't have a scholarship offer from Clemson and Alabama. Had you have had one of those ones, that other small program that you just said you committed to is probably going to be the one that, and there's nothing wrong with signing at a smaller program, but let's at least keep it somewhat either programs that you have legitimate offers from, or ones that are in your league. Don't go trying to make this out to be something that it's not.
Yeah, I think that the smaller school thing is kind of like what I said with the other sports. You're adding it in. You're taking it away from what people actually want to see. It's the age of smartphones. Everyone can see whatever they want at any time. You can look up facts on the bus. You can look up facts as you're walking to get some food, wherever. So if you're going to watch these recruits, and ESPN's trying to do it, and they're running like 30 minutes behind because high schools can't get their shit together, just change the day, NCAA. And I know they won't, because they're using this as a way to, we're not only promoting football, we don't really just care about them. We're not really just taking Notre Dame's wins away. It's nothing about football, blah, blah, blah. And they're just making stuff up. It's just at the point where it's becoming commercialized. And you said about the losing the star thing. The other thing I was going to bring up is some of these recruits that look like they're big time athletes, they stay at like 2-3 stars because they don't go to so-and-so rival sports camp, Nike camp. There was a receiver from Missouri that's ended up signing with Michigan. He was an Iowa commit, and he was a basketball player. Didn't go to any of these recruiting things. He had no stars. As soon as he signed with Michigan, they're like, well, we'll give him 3 stars because obviously he's jumping from Iowa to Michigan, so something must have happened. They didn't do any work. They just went ahead and they're just tic-tacked on a 3-star. They didn't go scout the kid. They didn't do anything because he was being scouted originally as a basketball player. He's only, I think, 6'2", so he's signing as a wide receiver. Maybe he realized, okay, well, I'm not really tall enough to play college hoops, my best bet's for football. And they didn't have any tape on him. They just made up a rating. I think even if you listen to, Harbaugh has his own podcast, Attack Each Day. He did a spiel on college recruiting, and I read through some of the notes on that. And he kind of said the same thing. Like, these recruiting services didn't even see him because he asked them. He said they just threw that 3-star up there. And that's a disservice to the kids. Another thing I would like to see is more consistent, like, kicking. If you sign the top kicker, which I know Michigan did a couple years ago. I don't know if they did again this year. But if you sign this top kicker, that shouldn't be a 0-star recruit to knock down your rating. Come on, how many teams lose games because of missed field goals? I think if you're going to go ahead and have these recruiting rankings, either have them have no effect, but don't go ahead and bump them down saying, well, he's a no-star recruit. So let's go ahead and bump that average down because they signed a kicker. Like, you signed a kicker. What a joke. I just think they need to do something. I don't think the NCAA is going to step in. But ESPN for years has been a joke with their ratings just because they didn't have dedicated scouts. So they just had guys guessing the same thing. And now they're getting publicized as ESPN top recruits. When ESPN doesn't have guys, they're firing hundreds of guys every couple months. They don't have guys going to see these kids play football. Like, who are they joking? Who's rating them? That's what I want to know. Matt, what do you think? Who is rating these guys for ESPN?
Well, I think the way that they're doing it is they're using like the rivals, and they're using Scout, and they're using these other services who are looking at these kids, and they're seeing who are the familiar names, and then those are the kids that are getting invited to the openings in those different cities. So they're pulling these kids, and then they're having these bigger blowouts where they're able to have combine scores posted and different things, so that then in these like mini combines and 7-on-7s, that now they're they were starting to they ran the advertisements 1,000 times on signing day about how at the opening, Alabama's quarterback, the freshman that scored with the T name that I can't pronounce.
Yeah.
He was on one team and Fromm was on the other team, and like how they went head to head during that 7-on-7 at their camp. I think that's kind of where they're getting some of that numbers. And if you're going to use that, fine. But then if you declare them as a blank and they've been at that rating for a long time, same consistency issues that we talked about before. What suddenly makes you change your mind and say, oh no, you're no longer this, especially after your season's done and there's nothing that can really help or hurt your ranking other than I could see losing stars for criminal record or criminal activity. If you're a 5-star and then you have felony drug possession, well, then you get to lose a couple of stars. Or if you beat up your girlfriend or boyfriend, guess what? If you're domestic abuse, especially in this charged climate, they're going to withdraw your scholarship.
I think Harbaugh even brought that up today. To get back, he said something like he saw a guy that only had 3 stars or something like that, and he was looking because he had great grades. He was one of the fastest players in the state. I can't remember who he was talking about. But then he's like, I thought for sure he had to have been arrested or something. Because who's just making these up? If you've never seen the guy, if he's out beating other guys, I just don't understand the rankings. The only other kid that I know stood out, the top, I think he was Offensive Player of the Year in Georgia. Signed with Michigan. Offensive Player of the Year for the whole entire state of Georgia. 3-star. He didn't get a bump for that. He didn't get a bump for breaking records in Georgia. So, I mean, it's not like he's small. I think he was 6 foot or something like that. He's going to play running back. I think it was because he was graded as an athlete. But, I mean, if you're breaking all the records and you're the legit player of the year for the entire state, how are you only a 3-star when there's like 50 players from Georgia that are 4-star or above? Doesn't make any sense. But I don't know. The split days are going to be interesting to see how many, like Penn State, they locked up their 5 stars pretty much in December. So, Rick, was there any even big guys that signed with Penn State, or were they completely done?
Most of their guys were already signed in December. That's why I thought when I had the day off and I was watching this, I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting and everything. Then when it was like, most of these guys are signed. Most of this teams are signed. Most of this teams are signed. I'm like, what the heck am I watching? It was boring as heck. I mean, it reminded me of the NFL Combine where they're just making stuff up at this point. It's like, it was just boring TV. I mean, just if we want like where people are or what people are doing illegally, like we had that police interrogation, we should have just made them watch that. We would have found out so much stuff on illegal criminals, making them watch that broadcast. It was boring. I watched 10 minutes of it. I said, I'm done. There's nothing. I said, the only part that I thought was funny where the one kid declared, and I think he was going to Florida, and his mom walked out. I'm like, that's funny TV. But outside that, the rest of it was just absolutely boring.
Awesome.
But I'm like, the mom was wearing, I think it was an Auburn hat.
No, it's Tennessee and Alabama.
No, Tennessee and Alabama. That's right. Yeah. And he went, yeah. And I'm like, this is about the only
good. To Florida.
Yeah. And I'm like,
well, that's because she wanted him to either be a life champion or a national champion, and he went to Florida instead, where you're neither.
Yeah. Any chance you have, like a good parent, she said, I'm not dealing with this nonsense, and she walked off because no one likes the Gators.
It was just, it was bad, and I don't get it. I mean, you saw teams pretty much did, a lot of them maybe have moved a step or two at the top, but most of the top teams didn't move much at all because they already had everybody locked up and everything. I mean, I think the top offensive tackle was out there, and Ohio State claimed him real early in the day, like 10 or 10:30. He was already signed. It was like, Ohio State's done for the day. It's like, okay, great. And then the top cornerback went to what? Was it Florida State? Where did Surtain go? No, he went to Alabama. He went to Alabama, and it's like they got their top guy they wanted. It's like, okay. And he was done before noon. I mean, a lot of it was already done. It was very boring. Don't recommend it. Won't be doing it next year.
Well, I'll tell you, I think what I've noticed, the teams that were flipping are typically the teams that have been compared to having bagmen in the past. You had your Floridas, your Alabamas, your Georgias, like all these SEC teams that have been accused of having bagmen. Those were the ones that were flipping teams. Your other teams like Penn State and most of like the rest of the country were pretty much done, unless you're like Florida State where you had a new coach. That's pretty much it. These teams that have established coaches, most of their kids had signed in December. So you really only have who's going to be getting that car. I saw one of the kids for Georgia. He posted an Instagram picture of him with like a Escalade with his mom driving. And then he deleted it real quick because he was like, whoa, I got to be careful with signing day. What am I doing? Mama going to be mad if they take her a ride. So that. But go ahead, Matt.
One of the things that I thought was overkill was how successful Georgia's recruiting class was. I think they beat that horse, and there was nothing left but a stain by the end of the day. I mean, Georgia cleaned house as far as the recruits, and with this cycle, they absolutely knocked it out of the park. But they just kept pounding on that drum, and it was like that was the only thing that anyone commented on for most of the day. And I think had Florida State's recruiting class have stayed, in the 50s or 60s, like they were, back before Taggart signed, that would have been all I would have had to have heard about all day. But because he was able to he busted his hump and put together a really good class, you didn't hear a peep. Jimbo Fisher, who didn't do anything, goes to A&M, silently pulls in a top tier, a top 20 signing class, gets no press. I thought there were some storylines that they could have followed a little bit closer, and they just chose to just focus on just the Georgia Love Fest.
Well, we forgot our boy Herm Edwards. I need to tweet this out. I got a text. It was like, how did Herm Edwards get beat half of the Pac-12 when he doesn't even recruit? Because that's another story.
He was still working for ESPN. Yeah. They were just like, he's like, wow, this is a lot different. In college, the kids get to pick you. In the NFL, you get to pick the players. Like, thanks, Grandpa. I'm glad that you just figured that out. And he still had a better recruiting class than half the Pac-12.
I thought the same thing. I'm like, how's Herm know what he's doing? And then the funny thing was, if you watch their bowl game, he was watching it on TV. ESPN called him, and he's watching it at his home on TV. I'm like, don't you want to know your players, or do you just want to sit at home and watch the game, prop the feet up? I'm like, I do not understand the Ohio or Arizona State Love Fest with Herm Edwards and why people are choosing it out there. But people must love Phoenix, Arizona. It's a great place to be. I vacation there a lot.
It's a good place to retire.
It is. It's a bunch of old people out there. It really is. I mean, it's like the Florida of the West. It really is. I don't get it. I wish Herm the best. I don't know what he's going to do. But he's probably going to be like Brady Hoke and just stand there on the sidelines with his hands crossed like this and point out like the quarterback needs to cover a receiver.
Well, they did point out, since you brought up Hoke, they made a point to bring out Cajun Hoke, Orgeron and LSU, how awful their class was. Yeah, real awful, signing like a 5-star player and a bunch of 4-stars. Think of how big of a slap in the face is that to teams that have never signed 5 stars ever, that they're like awful class. Awful class of top 15. That's awful. Who would ever have dared think that Cajun Hoke would have pulled that out? Could you imagine if Herm Edwards pulled in a 5-star? ESPN would have been talking about their
surprised.
They would have been like, "Hey, old buddy Herm, come back on the show," and he would have been doing a press tour. But might as well wrap it up. I did have Winter Olympics on here. I just wanted to make a point that the Winter Olympics, NBC, come on, what are you doing? Whoever does a deal for television contracts, get NBC off here. They did. The opening ceremony was like a Friday morning. Okay, it's like at 6 or 7 in the morning. Run it both times. What do you have in your normal programming at 7 in the morning? I don't think it's the Today Show, or is it? Like, why don't you just show both?
Yes.
I mean, why push everything back? And then I try to watch a little bit of the Olympics. And what do I see? I see their announcer guy. And this might have been my local station because I don't watch the news. And it looked like he wasn't like a big name NBC guy. But instead of like showing the event live, they like kind of push the event down in the corner, and it shows the newscaster guy trying to learn how to speak. Where are they? Korean?
South Korea.
South Korea. He's with some lady in the broadcast team, and it says, learn how to speak, whatever. I don't even know where the city is. I'm sounding really bad here. But instead of showing the actual event, it's showing him like hit up some South Korean girl. I'm like, what is this? Why aren't you showing the event? And then they're like, we'll get back to this in a little bit, but first we have to tell you about our sponsors. And then they go into all their NBC things, and hey, here's Tara Lipinski. She used to skate. Her face looks like it got a shot with Botox and frozen like a permanent smile the whole time she's talking. And it's just bad. Like, what are you doing? I can't watch this garbage. It's almost like they made a soap and they're like, yeah, from the 80s. You know how corny those are? You ever see them because they still do reruns, or they might be new episodes. I don't have any idea. But that's what it seems like NBC did with their coverage. They're like, you know what? Let's make it about like a lifestyle story. Let's make it about this. And there's already been some backlash. Someone saying about they've made insensitive Japanese comments or something. But I don't know. I can't get over it. And some of them are live, or some of the events live. I don't even know. What are you guys' thoughts on the Olympics? You want to end it on this?
Sure. If there was ever like the quintessential reason why everyone in the world hates America, Red Gerard, the first gold medal winner, he oversleeps because he's watching Netflix. He loses his coat and has to borrow his roommate's coat. Like, comes out just half-ass and then nails the half pipe and wins a gold medal for the Olympics. Like, completely does everything the wrong way with his parents shotgunning beers at 8:30 in the morning. Like, every other country that's like trying to compete and they see this is just like, how do we compete with this? Like, it doesn't even like this inept kid just destroyed all of us on the national stage. America.
I did see that.
Go America.
That's a good ender. Rick, what do you have to add? Anything?
I'm watching, actually, if you see my head keep turning, I'm actually watching the Olympics. Right now they're showing figure skater pairs, I believe on NBC Maine, live. If you look in the stands, the stadium's huge, and there's like 12 people watching this. So I don't know who's in South Korea watching this, because nobody's probably paid attention. They showed Shaun White. His was on tape delay, because I know that was earlier, because I saw that. I mean, the funny thing is, a lot of the events, you could watch them online. Here's the thing. They played the women's hockey game was live today at 6 a.m. They actually showed it live, but they showed it on CNBC or something live. Instead, we got to watch the Today Show on ESPN. Savannah Guthrie, who is just, I don't understand her. And Hoda was watching, and they're talking. It's like, instead of having them talk, just be like, okay, we are here at the Olympics. We're kicking it to watch the women's hockey game, or we're kicking it to this live event. I mean, it's just awful. I don't understand why we got to have the Today Show. I don't understand. I guess people love getting the wrong news from Al and having a pun being said that makes no sense, because Al Roker's awful. I don't know why people watch the Today Show. I watch it for laughs. I mean, it's just awful. It's like a train wreck. And but I don't get it. I mean, it should have been the women's hockey game. They blew out they blew out Russia today. I can't even remember.
Does Russia even have a team? I didn't think Russia could compete.
They're under the Olympic flag or something. But whoever I can't remember who USA played. That's how long ago. Because
they're independent. They're independent athletes.
They're gray shirts. Yeah. They have to wear gray unis, don't they?
Yeah, they can't wear any of the flag colors. Yeah, it's awful.
That's so dumb. I'm going to do some research. I'm going to bring that in. We'll get back on this next week after I get some more events.
Men's hockey game is tomorrow at 6 a.m., I believe. It's 6 a.m. if you want to watch the men's team, led by former Sabre Brian Gionta. So I want to see my boy from Gionta lead this team to victory.
Just remember, no matter where you're watching, it is always appropriate to start a USA chant. Doesn't matter if they're winning. It doesn't matter what sport, if we're winning in curling or luge. Just go for it. But we'll get back. We're going to get into some more Winter Olympic stuff. I'll tease out a little bit. I did see where one of the guys, he wasn't named captain, and on a coin flip, he said that was bullshit or something. I'll be bringing
Shante Davis.
I'll be bringing that in next week. So make sure you come back Tuesday at 9, Southbound Sports Show. Follow us out, S-Bound Sports on Twitter and Southbound Sports on Facebook and Instagram. And we'll see you guys next week.